How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. It's been such a long time, hasn't it?
I know. And do you know what's so nice is like, I think it's been a year because when I was at IMS, I was like, oh, this was the last time I spoke to Kat. And then you
Mm.
started this whole new role since then. So it's really nice because I feel like we have loads to catch up on.
It's true, yeah, it's true. So it's very timely. How was IMS this
Yeah.
year?
I was only there for a day. So for me, it was really brief.
Mm.
But I kind of enjoyed it more for that, I think, because I could kind of go to everything when I was sort of, when everyone's around the pool and you sort of just chat to everyone. I had a very
Yeah,
fun kind of few hours of just like, da, 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 and then could go a bit of a party and then get back on the plane. So it kind of was
yeah, yeah,
great for being quite short and
yeah.
sweet.
I think so. I
Um,
think so. It's a nice way to
yeah.
do it. It can be quite. It's a wonderful thing, IMS and AD. But if you did in its entirety, it can be quite challenging and draining because there's just so much to do and so many things you don't want to say no to. So I think you did it the smart way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't know how you find it, but I find that like I am an extrovert and I love meeting new people. I love talking to people, but sometimes I just get that sort of drain where I'm like, oh,
Mm.
I don't know if I can be on any longer. I need to kind of retreat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm an introverted extrovert. So I'm actually an introvert by nature. And I just kind of do what I need to do. So I would say I'm just very brave. So even if I'm scared to do something or if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, I just do it and I do it really well. But it definitely means that I need time to fill my cup back up once I
Yeah.
have these sorts of social interactions. Obviously, I'm around a lot of people now more than normal. And I've definitely noticed that I've had to build in routines to be able to give myself a bit of recharge time to be able to do that, because whilst being with these people gives me energies in some ways, being an introvert, you just have to know yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
Particularly in the industry that we work in, because it's amazing, but it is very intense and always just so much going on.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast the other day actually with an agent, and she was talking about the fact that what started as something that she wanted to do in terms of going out and being in green rooms all the time suddenly became an expectation for her role.
Mm-hmm.
And she
Sure.
was like, I don't know if, but now it's an expectation. It doesn't feel like I'm making the choice and it doesn't feel like I necessarily want to be there. And I do think it's one of the challenges of working in such a sociable industry is where you draw the line.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
well, I wanted to actually just get straight stuck in
Yeah,
with Star
please.
Player because I've been seeing it crop up. Obviously, I think when we last spoke, you just started there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been following it since then and seen so many people that I follow and artists kind of pass through the doors. So could you give a little bit of an intro to Star Player and the
Two-star
ideas
player,
behind
yeah,
it?
absolutely. So yeah, I mean we've only been, we're about a year old actually. So we
Mm.
did our first proof of concept, if you like, sort of camp last year in a villa, just sort of hired a villa for a week and had lots of artists through to basically collaborate together and make music. And then we sort of grown from there. But it's probably best to talk about the ethos really and what Star Player is and why it even exists. Essentially, it's founded by two renowned, I would call them musical geniuses, and that's not an exaggeration, Tom Starr and Mark Maitland, who founded the company last year with a vision of essentially bringing together artists across genre for collaboration and to be able to facilitate a creative hub in order to be able to do that. Obviously, both Tom and Mark work with, I would say, sort of artists at the very top end of the industry and have done for a long time and been able to facilitate collaboration and working with these artists, etc. But what we're doing here at Star Player is kind of opening it up to rising singer-songwriters as well, putting in artists in a room that would never normally be in a room, and magic is coming out of that, and music that would never be made is coming out of that. So essentially it was built to facilitate collaboration and make even better music, was the kind of reason it was originally incepted. We did a test camp in the villa. It was amazing. Loads of great tracks, some really big hits that I'm sure many people would have heard as well that have sort of came out of that. And we had a mix of larger artists as well as more of the sort of up and coming. And then we basically moved into this villa that we're now in in Ibiza last year. So we've got 4 studios here, 14 bedrooms. We've got 4 studios, and basically we operate as a creative hub. People come and stay with us for a period of days. We also have drop-in sessions for people coming in to jump into the studio sessions themselves, and people generally stay with us between anything from 3 days up to 10 days. I'd say the average is 6, and then each day studio sessions are set out and cultivated by Tom Staar. We have the lead producers on site, Tom Staar, Mark Maitland, and then we have another 2 Staar Player producers as well. So there's always a producer leading the session. We have on-site vocalists and singer-songwriters as well. But what's really beautiful is that the type of thing that's been happening in the music is like people are organically connecting, because we offer full board as well. So people are staying here, they're having their breakfast, lunch and dinner here. So they have their fixed session, which is kind of like, at the moment we've got one studio which seems to have turned into a bit of a techno dome this week, which I personally love, of course, being that I'm a techno girl. And then, but what happened a few days ago is that this one artist was sort of walking past, and a guy was in there playing this. He plays rock, and he was playing this amazing guitar riff. And the guy that was walking past is like an Afro house producer, and they sort of went in, but they sort of connected anyway, and they just started having this sort of jam. And then one of the singer-songwriters walked in, and he was like, feeling this, and just, can I jump on the mic? And the result was this incredible track that would never have been made, this sort of Afro house with this guitar riff, with this incredible kind of almost Justin Timberlake-esque vocal. And that's just one, example of the sort of magic that happens here. We had another session recently where one of our Staar Player producers, Kyozo, who's incredibly talented, he was leading a session, and a classical pianist started to basically just join into what was, I think, probably be classed as like melodic techno, progressive house, but then it ended up becoming this whole new thing. And on the back of that, it's just, all these things are sort of happening here, which is really, really magical. So all of the sort of bigger artists that Tom and Mark work with are consistently coming through, and then we have some real rising talent as well, which is just beautiful to see, to be able to all be in the room together and make things happen.
It literally sounds like producers heaven.
Everyone says that. Everyone says that. They're like, this is like a dream, Not only are you getting to sort of stay in a incredible villa, and it's beautiful views, and it's it's a wonderful experience. We definitely have a sort of family sort of vibe here going on, where we, everybody's, feels very welcome. And I like to balance the mantle between, obviously I've got a business to run, I'm the CEO, and making sure that everything's running properly, but to also allow that space for creativity. And I think, it's definitely I would say it's one of the more challenging roles I've ever had, because of the intensity of it. But it's definitely the most rewarding, because I get to see not just the music that's created and how people interact, but what has been happening inside of these artists when these things have been happening. And, because making music, I think in any genre, can be really lonely. And I think, being in a band is wonderful and all these things. Often with electronic music, you're just, you're producing, you're in your own little bunker, your little room or your studio. And it can just be really lonely. I had an artist over who is a very big artist, very, big profile, but also a good friend of mine. And she came over for a few days and just left with so much music. And she said to me, she's a great producer in her own right. She doesn't need to be around people. She doesn't need people to lead sessions or help her, because some people we work with, they're really great, but they're not in terms of as an artist, but they don't necessarily know the software like really super well or whatever. So, can have a bit of help with that. We don't do any ghost producing or anything like that. It's not what we do, but we can help, upskill people if needed.
Yeah,
if
someone's just got 3 years experience, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
10.
versus 30. Yeah, which is what, obviously Tom and Mark have been making music since they're teens, and we're all a similar age. So, but yeah, she just said to me, she'd had a lot of creative blocks, and that has been, being able to just be in a room with all these inspiring people was able to her to kind of unlock all these different doors. And she ended up walking away with music that she probably wouldn't have, well, she said, she wouldn't have made otherwise. And this is the type of thing that happens. So it's very unique. I mean, making music together isn't unique, of course, but being able to facilitate the cross genre and leverage our kind of connections in the industry by bringing people together is just a really beautiful thing to do. So I'm incredibly proud of what we're building here. And it's going from strength to strength. As you say, you've seen a lot of it in a short space of time, which is great.
I want to talk to you about the commercial side, but I did just want to touch on what you were saying about the different genres, because I was thinking about a conversation I had years ago. I used to do a different podcast and I was interviewing Ultra Nate, and she was talking about
Yeah.
Free and how the inspiration for that song was REM.
Yes,
I think it was Losing My Religion. And
yes,
I think that it's amazing how a lot of iconic house songs you wouldn't necessarily know. And Another have just released a song with like almost like a rock guitar as like the opening hook, and you wouldn't necessarily know from. I even only just found out the other day that Ferrari samples a hip hop record from the 90s.
yeah.
As the
So
hook,
we worked on Ferrari actually with I think Mark Maitland mixed and mastered it. Yeah. So that was Mark Maitland. So I would say is probably probably the biggest mix and mastering engineer in the industry. So yeah, he actually Ferrari's very close to our heart here. Yeah.
I think I emailed him when I'd first started producing because I'd heard that he was amazing, just being like, hi. And he replied. He was really nice.
Yeah,
he was like, I'm quite busy.
Yeah, but you know what? They really are the nicest guys in the world, in the sense that they're so humble, considering how much success they have and how talented they are. And, as a producer myself, albeit, what I would consider, up and coming in terms of that. I mean, I make music for love really more than anything else, but I know how long it takes me to make something. And I watch them and I'm like, this is insane. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So on the commercial side, because it's one of the biggest challenges with the music industry, and as you say, kind of wanting to bring up and coming talent in, but they might be in a different financial position. How do you think about that as a CEO, and how do you make that work?
Yeah, so we obviously charge for like studio sessions, etc. And then we're able to kind of mix it up in terms of how much we charge and what we do. So obviously we have, if you want time with Mark Maitland or Tom Staar, that's expensive, right? So like one-on-one time with them, and that will never change, nor should it, frankly, because it's like anything, isn't it? If you want to buy Prada, you're not going to pay Primark. Like, this, that simple. Yeah. But we obviously also have our own producers here, and we're able to, with the collaboration, what we do is we do like a package. So people are not buying time, they're actually buying an experience. So they're basically paying to have almost like a little holiday. So they get their accommodation included, their food included, plus studio time, which is led by a Staar Player producer who have obviously been trained by Mark and Tom. So they're also incredible, right? So, and then, the only thing that they would need to pay extra for is if they want one-on-one with Tom or Mark. But we also have mix and mastering services as well. So it could be that, a lot of the time would happen is that people will make music here and then they would just buy the mix and mastering. So Mark can basically do that as a standalone thing. So they still get that kind of benefit of the Maitland magic, if you like, without having to, if they can't necessarily afford time to work with him one-on-one. We have dry hire for studios as well, because we've got 4 studios on site, and they're really cool and they look great. So they're great for content. We're very big on content as well. We are all of the understanding now that, this industry is as much about the content as it is about the music. And as much as the music is what is at the very core of what we all do and why we're here, we have a really good understanding of the importance of content and being able to, give artists the opportunity to be able to create that as well. So, we do get a lot of companies and things that want to hire the studio for content or the villa for various things. So yeah, it's definitely, I've had to be a bit creative with it to make sure that it's fair for everyone, but also, I've got a business to run and overheads and whatnot. So of course we need to better make it happen. And I think most people understand that. And so they're more than happy to, contribute, and they see the value in it. With singer-songwriters and things like that, depending on if they live on the island, if they stay, all this sort of thing, we're able to, work it out. So we have fixed pricing, but I tend to put together bespoke packages for everyone, depending on who they are, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And the only thing that isn't negotiable, as I say, is the one-on-one with Tom or Mark. And often, actually, I've been finding that people have been coming, they've been staying, and they're like, right, I'm going away and I'm going to save up and I'm going to come back and have a day with Tom. And on that basis, I would usually sort of make a deal with them and say, great, we'll have you to stay the night as well. And I wouldn't charge them for that, for example. So I feel like it's really important to work together on these things to be able to make it happen, because ultimately I they can't have the experience without what I need, and I can't build this without the artist. So, it's about making it as fair as possible for everyone. And look,
Yeah.
Ibiza's expensive, and actually what we charge, if you were to hire a hotel and food and beverage, it's not completely dissimilar really, but you're just walking away with amazing memories and some great tunes. So
Yeah.
it's actually a win-win really.
Yeah, completely. Tell me about the villa. Did you find it with the studios, or did you find the space? Like, what was the...
So everything is the vision of the boys. I'm not going to take any credit whatsoever for the creative vision of, basically they come up with they're the ideas, and I'm the right, how do we do this and how do we do it properly? They've affectionately nicknamed me Mummy, which is kind of stuck. I kind of didn't like it at first, but then I was like, you know what, this actually makes sense, because I kind of, I'm like, yes, we're doing that. No, we are absolutely not doing that, because they'll come up.
Yeah,
with
in a nice way. You're like,
incredible...
I'm making the decisions.
Yeah. It's basically like we just can't do that. Or absolutely, yes, we can, and that's great. So we looked at lots of different villas, and a lot of things were important to us in terms of making sure that the accommodation is set up and everything. But no, the studios were basically, just the product of the ideas of Tom and Mark and how they wanted to do it. So Tom was very clear about the spaces that he wanted to put them in. Mark's very clear about the equipment that is required. And between the two of them, they're kind of, because Mark is sort of very, very technical in terms of the way that he works. And Tom is, I would say, like they're both creative, they're both technical. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to operate the level they do. Yeah. But Tom is very much about these great ideas. And so between the two of them, it's like, this is how we should, this is what we should do. This is how we should do it. And then I come in at the back end and say, right, this is how we execute it, measure it, and make sure it's sustainable.
Yeah.
So we built the studios. We built them all from scratch, and we've got them in our, what was the master bedroom, which overlooks, it's got an amazing view all across Ibiza or a part of Ibiza. And then we have one in the main room, and then we have one in what was the gym, and then one at the back end of the club, because the villa's also got a club as well, which is pretty cool.
Amazing. Only in Ibiza.
Although I'm the only one that really goes in there, because everyone's so busy making music that and obviously I'm in Ibiza, and my sound as an artist is way more Berlin. So I tend to, if I want to chill out or have a bit of me time, I'll just lock myself in the club when everyone's busy in the studios and just bash out some techno. Yeah. That's my downtime, which is cool.
Yes. Yeah. Are you living, because you've split your time between the UK and Ibiza for a while now?
Yeah, I live between here and Brighton. So I live in Hove, actually, which is gorgeous, and I love it. But I definitely spend more time in Ibiza at the moment. But yeah, I fly back and forth. I have a music studio / office in Brighton that I kind of am able to get, I would say, more sort of real focused strategic stuff done, because when I'm here on site, I'm not just doing the ship. There's a fair amount of running around the deck as well. That I have to do. So it's actually really good for me to be able to balance it, to be in the thick of things, understanding what's needed, and then going away back to the UK to kind of implement things in a calmer, quieter environment, because obviously it's a creative hub here, which is amazing. And next time you're in Ibiza, you've got to come over and soak up vibes, because there's no place like it. It's really amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I'm hoping to come out
to live here 24/7 is a lot. It's a lot for me.
Are you living in the villa when you're in Ibiza?
So I live on site, but we have a casita at the sort of end of the villa, which is where myself and some of the other team live, because we've got a big team now. We've got we've got the Staar Player producers, we've got a head of audio who kind of sets up all the studios, makes sure that everything's running like clockwork, because obviously those studios are put to work very hard, so we need to make sure we have to have someone on site who's an expert in that, and he's amazing. And then we have content team here as well, so we've got filming going on consistently, which is really great for the artists, also for us as well. So we built out a team of really amazing people. We all tend to wear multiple hats, and we're all either have worked in the industry for a long time or are artists as well, at varying degrees of profile, etc., or reason why we do it. But we're all very connected in that way.
How are you finding, given how close you are to, well, you're an artist yourself, you're a DJ yourself, you have been for a while, and you're now around artists and DJs all the time. How are you finding that people are at the moment? What's the kind of general energy and sentiment in the
Yeah,
industry that you're finding?
I think, I always try to speak to the artist as much as possible. I think for me as an artist, like I obviously started out playing house music and I've been spinning vinyl since I was about 15, but I started playing house music when I was like professionally, had a residency at Pasha in London for 3 years back in the sort of like 2012, 2013 sort of era. And I did a bit of the touring and playing around Europe and living out of a suitcase and in hotel rooms and things like that. And it, sort of definitely wasn't for me. So whilst I absolutely am an artist and consider myself one and still play and albeit not as much, so I just don't have time and I still make music, etc. I would say my view of the world is very different to the artists that we get through here. I think one thing that is a running theme is that I think the importance of content is something that people struggle with, because if you're not everyone, some people nail it and that's great. But some people definitely, from conversations I have, is that, they would like to get better at that side of things because they do understand that there's the need for that. And also, not all DJs are producers, right? And not all producers are DJs. And actually, they're very different skills. And I can say this as someone I'm a selector. I am a DJ's DJ. I never plan my sets. I never know what I'm going to do until I do it. I only really play vinyl at home. I'm very, I always go on emotion and feeling rather than any form of tech. I don't use the CDJs to the best of their advantage or anything like that. I'm definitely a DJ. So for me to learn to produce actually been really, really hard. Whereas obviously a lot of we get through here is, more producers, and they're just looking to up level their music and go from good to great. And then we have obviously DJs that have the challenges, which I just mentioned, about the fact that they're like, well, we need to get better with content, but also to get more gigs, we need to be making music. And, so they could be that they've made some great music, but it's not necessarily doing as well as they would have hoped, or how do they get signed to different labels, et cetera, et cetera. So often people will come through with, problems that they need solutions to, which is, a beautiful thing to be able to help with. But I would say the overall energy of certainly the artists I talk to is that they're excited and they're happy, and they're fine, that the opportunities that they're getting, and it's just about I mean, certainly, again, I can only really talk about, I sort of live in a bit of a villa bubble here, so I don't really go out or
which
see
sounds
anyone.
like a really great bubble. So why?
I know it's not a bad bubble. Yeah, it's not a bad bubble, is it? Definitely can't complain. But I mean, they tend to come. All the artists I talk to, so the challenges are around, should they get management or not? How do the business side of things is definitely a question mark, because it makes sense because they're creatives. It was no different to Mark and Tom wanting to create Staar Player and going, this is what we want to do, but how do we do it? And then a mutual friend that we both have, who is an artist and has done lots of like collaboration bits and stuff with Tom over the years, said, oh, you need to speak to my friend Kat Hooper, because this is exactly what she does, and she'll be able to literally take your idea and put a business plan behind it and actually bring it to life. So that's kind of how it happened. But this was very much at the inception, because creatives often, it's a very different side of the brain that you use. It's a very different skill set, and not everybody that is an artist, a creative, understands business. So I think that's probably the thing where there's frustrations and challenges. And it's something that I, as the CEO of Staar Player, I'm really thinking about how we can create a solution to that, to be able to give some sort of mentorship or something around that side of it for them. Because obviously we're already helping them make great music, which is amazing, and touching on parts of the content, and that's only going to improve we've just brought on a new marketing lead actually, who's incredible. So that's because we're putting a lot more emphasis on that. But to be able to work with artists in that way will be,
There's so many things we spoke about just before, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting is the way at Staar Player, obviously recognizing it's kind of, the artist ecosystem is so all-encompassing nowadays in a way that maybe it hasn't always been, that you kind of, even I remember when I first started DJing, then realizing, oh, you kind of had to produce to move as an artist. And then now it's like, oh, and you also kind of have to be a creator on some level and create content. It's like, you can't really just be one. And when I think what I'm trying to do with DMD is build that sort of a kind of ecosystem where it's like it's releasing music, but it's also telling artist stories and those sorts of things. I thought that was really interesting in your approach.
Yeah, it's really important to be able to do that. And I think, you know, whilst education isn't necessarily at the forefront of what I'm looking to create here, I think we are going to touch on that because I think it's a natural step as a business and as we grow to be able to offer things under the education umbrella, but certainly to be able to facilitate an understanding of the ecosystem and to be able to connect people in the right way. You know, in fact, I've, you know, been talking about our mutual friend Alex and what they do at Unheard, and you know, I've mentioned that to a lot of artists, and there's lots of different things out there that people don't know about, that they've never even heard of, no pun intended, that, you know, that
he's gonna love that.
Want to, but they don't know exists. And I think that's one thing that I'm looking to do, because I spend quite a bit of time just chatting to artists about their challenges, and you know, it is a real common theme. You're right, it's the ecosystem, and it's also just not having necessarily it might not come to people naturally, you know. It's like, for me, I personally, content for me is something I really, really, really struggle with. I hate being on camera. I hate doing, like, you know, and I also don't have the headspace. So as an artist, you know, whilst I play great music and arguably make great music, because I've had some great artists play it, it's, you know, being able to tell that story, and the artist's story is important, you know, but being able to package that up into a way that makes sense for everyone is it's definitely a challenge. And so anything that we can do to help that is, you know, and also I feel like the way that the artists, I don't want to get too much into this now, but I think like the way the music is monetized and the way artists are paid, and for the music is specifically itself, not talking about DJ sets so much, but you know, also there's a lot of change that needs to happen there. And I feel that, you know, that's something that not necessarily I want to try and take on, you know, right now, but it's definitely a consideration for something that, you know, I think needs more of discussion going forward as to how to make that ecosystem fairer for the artists, because you know, ultimately the music is everything. That's what it's all about, and without the artists we don't have the music. You know, it's like, as a DJ, people praise the DJ, and I praise DJs too. I love DJs. We're both one, so of course, you know, absolutely. But I also, you know, all hail the producer, because if they didn't make great music, I'd have nothing to play. So, you know, it's really important to be able to celebrate that, and to make sure that they're given the shout outs that they deserve, the recognition they deserve. And, you know, there's lots of different ways to make it in the industry now, of course, but there's the quick way, which is really just getting yourself a really great content strategy, or there's the, you know, the way that actually stands the test of time, which is ultimately down to the quality of the output, which is the sets you play and the music you make. I think I know every single person that we've ever had through this villa is in it for the right reasons. And when I say the right reasons, right's perhaps not the right word, because there's no right or wrong, but reasons that align with my way of thinking, is that they're in it for their absolute love of music, and they are a true artist, and they want to express that art and gift it to the world.
Yeah. I feel like you have what for so many people would be a dream job, because you are able to marry these two things, which is you get to be, well, in Ibiza, which is like, hello, who doesn't want to be in Ibiza?
Yeah, I know.
But also as you mentioned, the skill sets of creativity and loving music don't always necessarily come alongside having a business brain and an ability to actually run a business that connects to that creativity. So could you give some insight into your background? It's like, how does someone get to be the CEO of a company like Staar Player?
It's interesting, actually, because I've often thought this about Staar Player, about I've got a lot of friends that are CEOs, MDs, etc., and they're arguably, you know, more experienced than me, in the sense they're like in their late 50s, they've been doing it for longer, etc. But I'm like, they would never be able to do this, because the fact that I've got the artist side to me gives me such a different view of the world than what the corporate people have. But my background is real estate, actually. I started in the 90s as a sort of junior lettings person, and then moved into sales quite quickly and became like the top salesperson in the company, and then the manager, and then I became a director by 26. So I had quite a fast trajectory to the boardroom. And being the only woman, which in itself was a challenge, less so now than it was back then, but certainly being someone that was A, under 40 in the boardroom, and B, being a woman. And also the fact I've always looked a bit younger than I am, which I'm really grateful for now. But back then I looked about 3. So it was quite hard for people to take me seriously. And I think I learned a lot in a very, really young age. And it was really the only way I was able to transfer my skills is because I actually got into prop tech a little bit later. So basically I worked as a director of estate agencies, started running multiple branches across London, and then basically got into training. So I was the head of the global head of training and infrastructure for Fine & Country, which is a very big brand. And I was basically responsible for training and mentoring because I'd kind of had enough of running agencies, etc. And I then got headhunted to do some training for a prop tech company that were basically an estate agency that wanted to basically set up as an online only option. And they basically wanted to bring me in to do some training for them. And I was like, okay, fine. Because at this point, was doing this only training at this point. So I was like, okay, I'll do this. Well, I think it was about 2 weeks of me being there, I was like, wow, their sales director is really not up to this. This is a problem. The sales director, I think, knew that because they left. And so I just said, look, I will manage it. I'll just jump into those, because I'd been a sales director for so many years. I said, look, I'll just jump into the shoes for a couple of weeks, get us over the hurdle, and we can recruit someone. Well, within 2 weeks, I'd pretty much done more in terms of business and revenue generation, etc., than the previous guy had done in all this time. So actually, they were like, well, look, we'd really love you to be the national sales director. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. I've moved away from that. However, it was the best thing that I could have done in my life. And I think sometimes you can only join the dots looking backwards. Because whilst I didn't stay there that long, it was a 1-year consultancy contract, and I only stayed there for a year. It was a technology company. So everybody else that worked in there was kind of from a tech background, a digital world. So I obviously knew estate agency inside and out from the ground up. And I'd done a lot of startups in estate agency, opening brand new branches, scaling them from 1 office to 6 or 8 or 10 across the capital. So I had the experience in sort of startups and scaling. But then when I then learned about digital acquisition and then running a tech company, I was like, okay, this is quite cool. And then I got headhunted by Sarah Beanie herself. She called me and said, I've heard really great things about you. I set up this estate agency, online agency a few years ago. We need some operational change management. Will you come and be our COO? And I was like, well, I don't really want to do that because I don't really want to run. I just want to go back to training. To be honest, I love training, and but if Sarah Beanie calls you,
that mentorship probably side of you as well.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what, it's Sarah Beanie. She's amazing. I'll just do it for a year. Well, I was there for I basically took it to merge. So I was there for 3.5, almost 4 years, I think. And I learned so much. I got to work as a deputy CEO under a chap called Nick Charnock, who was the ex-COO of Samsung. So he had a huge amount of experience in terms of scaling. Obviously, Tepelo was a big, big business, very high turnover, lots of staff. And I just learned a huge amount. But at the same time, at this point, I'd started DJing and I got the residency at Pasha. So I was playing at Pasha in London. And then in 2015, I decided to basically set up my own event, which was an event called Unmasked. It was at Electroworks in Angel. And it basically went from this very small party to one of the biggest alternative techno nights in London. And then I decided that actually I wanted to set up a record label because I was meeting all these artists and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I'm like, well, I know how to run a business, whatever. But I was basically chatting to a friend of mine who ran a label already. And he was like, well, I really need someone to run my label. So rather than set up your own, why don't you just run mine? So I was like, okay, cool. So I started to run a little small independent label called Metempsychosis Records. So I was doing this all while. So I was basically a deputy CEO by day. And then at the weekends, I was DJing and running events and a label. I then decided that with 2 friends of mine, we were going to set up a DJ agency because we didn't like the way that agencies were booked. So we set up a female DJ agency called Dex in the City. which was a hilarious name. But we actually ended up signing some really great artists that are now huge, like that we had on there. And we did that. I ran that actually till the pandemic, and it was only the pandemic that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna, something's got to give, and that's the one that did.
Yeah.
So subsequently, I had a lot of experience in running events and the label side of things and the artist management side of things, all whilst doing, real estate. And then in 2018, when I took Sarah Binney's business to merge, I decided that I don't really want to work in real estate anymore. And why don't I take my love of business and my love of music and work as a consultant? Because I'm really, really good at operational change management. I'm really good at startups. I had done a few years previously, I'd done my MBA distance learning. So I had obviously all of the kind of formal qualifications that you'd need as well. And so I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to put myself out there. And I got a 1-year contract with a global label as a chief commercial officer. So I did that. And then I started the label that I was running. They launched a music production company, which is in Berlin, which does online masterclasses and sample packs and courses, etc., but with really big names, but specifically in techno, but like German techno, basically. And they asked me, they said, look, we really need to scale this business. We've got it to this point. Would you come in and be our head of growth, global head of growth? And I was like, yeah, it's a small business. So for me, it's like super easy. So I was like, well, yeah, I'm just going to have 3 clients, basically. So I'll have a small, a medium, and a large. And that kind of enabled me to move, I suppose, more into the education, the music education space and the digital client acquisition. And then I started working with Lady the House, which is, I think, where you and I met. I was running Lady the House. Yeah. And Lady the House were basically looking for a GM, a part-time GM, to basically help them with the kind of roadmap and the vision for the business. And because I'd been also a bit that I think I was going to talk about when we got cut off, but I've been a mentor for the Aspire Women Foundation, which is basically where they prepare successful women in business with women and girls in charities and non-profits for a 6-month mentorship to basically teach those in charities and non-profits the skills that are used in successful corporate companies. So I did that for about 8 years. So Lady of the House is a CIC, so it's not quite a charity, but it's that kind of bridge between. So I have a very big understanding of how charities work as well through my mentoring. So I saw this job for Lady of the House and I saw it, and then I had, I think, 4 different friends send me the screenshot for this advert. Got the job at Lady of the House, and I worked with them on initially it was a 6-month contract, but I was actually there a bit longer because I wanted to stay and help them with their activation at ADE, and we did a panel with Pioneer, which was amazing, and a mixer and stuff like that. And I then switched. I stayed with Home of Sound up until the very end of last year. So I was with them for about 5 years. And then Lady of the House was a shorter contract. But then I started working with Tag Mix, which is a music media, basically. So it's like amazing piece of kit that you're able to basically match your social media with the audio, like it's been through a sound desk. And that was music tech. And I was like, okay, I'm loving being back in tech again. This is great. So basically I just had multiple clients covering all different aspects of music. So when Staar Player came along, Tom had lots of different ideas as to Mark too, but Tom specifically with conversations, he had lots of different ideas about how he wanted to do what he wanted to do and how he would do it. And it's just been really interesting because it kind of encompasses a lot of what I have done with the obviously understanding running labels, understanding the publishing side of things, as well as understanding the digital acquisition stuff, because we're also going to be doing some like digital products and things like that alongside obviously the music production piece, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it was a very kind of aligned with what I've done versus what they need. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely my destiny to be doing this. I feel like the universe, everything lined up. And also for the boys, they say the same thing. It's like, we don't know who else could do this because we're just the right combination.
Yeah. But I love talking to you because I feel like you're so, I don't know, capable sounds like weak, but you just make stuff happen, and you've got this sort of ability to turn your energy on things. And I wonder if you have a good sense of what the skills you carry are that means that you can just make things happen, because a lot of people dabble in things.
I earned my stripes in business in sales, really. Like, that's what I would consider, if I had to have gun to head what I'm the expert at, and what, I did a lot of trade, it would be sales. But I actually really learnt a lot of being so capable and being able to carry so much is, I actually think, learned from being a single mum, because I fell pregnant when I was just 16, and literally first time, complete shock. And, I had my daughter when I was 17, and I came literally from nothing. I was homeless at one point. I literally had, not a penny to put together. I was a size 18. I'm now a size 8. Not that size makes any difference, but certainly it was mindset for me of, how I cared about myself then versus how I care about myself now, more than anything else. And just learning that I think you build confidence by doing. And so when you're faced with these really big challenges, like not having anywhere to live and being able to having to feed your baby on milk tokens, or, losing 6.5 stone of weight, which is a huge amount for, by anyone's standards, that you don't just wake up and do, right? It requires dedication, discipline, all these things. And looking back on all the really hard things that I've done, is that I go, well, if I've done that, I can do this. And I think it's I am intelligent. My IQ is really high, and all those things, which is great. But it's actually the practical skills. And I think the ability to go, I can work this out. It's about being able to problem solve and having real confidence, and also setting boundaries as well around other people. And I'm very strict around how I set out my days. I don't let the tail wag the dog. This is my output. This is where the tail, energy versus time, is what depletes my energy, what gives me energy. So I personally do my energy depleting tasks in the morning. People go, well, why would you want to deplete all your energy first thing in the day? And I'm like, because I wake up with a full bank, I drain it, and then I spend the rest of the day filling it back up with the things I love doing. And then I go to bed with a full bank. So it's actually great. Yeah. And they're like, oh, didn't think of it like that. Because obviously we have to spend time doing lots of things. And at the moment, as a CEO here, I am literally spinning so many plates. It's, I've got my hands into marketing, into sales, as well as obviously, running the business side of things, the strategy, the direction, basically wearing the hat of probably 5 or 6 board members, and then understanding what's needed. But then I feel like a CEO is that, right? We're a bit like a GP. We kind of know enough about everything, and then we know when to bring in a specialist for that particular part of what we do.
Yeah.
But I look back and I really do think that the skills for me, to answer your question, is, being a single mum is so young, and having to fight for, my life in many ways, and for my baby girl. And so it was like, I'm going to do this. And she's 28 this year, and she's an incredible woman. And I look back at that and I'm like, well, that could have really gone another way.
So inspired actually by the amount of women that I speak to. I mean, even my sister's, she's got 2 children. She's just building her own business now. And I've never seen her. She's always been capable. She's got this drive now that she's got the kids. And it's really common. So many women I know that have children, that all of a sudden they're able to juggle even more. It's just like, I find it really inspiring.
I really feel like, when the reason I didn't pursue a career in music sooner, because I started DJing like 15, just playing records and drum and bass, and I've always just been completely music obsessed. I went to my first rave at 13. Sorry, mum. At Dreamscape, 1993, and I absolutely loved it. And I think I would have probably taken that path sooner, but because of my daughter, and this property came about, and I did super well, and I kind of got stuck in it. So it was when my daughter went off so when she was sort of like mid-teens, and she was just finishing school, she went to live with her dad for a bit, and then off to college and uni. So it was like, all of a sudden I felt like I was working part-time, even though I was doing 80-hour weeks still. Because I didn't have that full-time around-the-clock care of a child, because she was at this point, growing into a young woman, and her father was back in her life and various things. So I had this sort of life change, and I just felt like I was working part-time. So I was like, oh, I can start a label now, or I run a label, or I can start this, or I can do this, and everyone's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, well, no, I'm just really, 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 really good at spinning plates. And mums are, and dads, we parents are really good at spinning plates. It's, you know, and that's why as much as that, sort of them jokingly calling me mummy, I'm like, actually, this is kind of the way it is here at the moment, because I am spinning all these different plates. The only one that says no, well, I say no more than I say yes, let's be honest. I do run a tight ship because I have to, right? You know, it's a villa in Ibiza. It could very easily get out of hand if you didn't have one person saying, right, this is what we do and this is how we do it.
Putting some boundaries in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very good at setting boundaries out of self-devotion, not self-defense. So I look at and that's for both myself and for the business. You know, I always, as a leader, I prefer to inspire and not demand. I don't find I need to demand anything, actually, because I don't throw my weight around. It's not a power trip for me. If I go hard on something, people know, they know why. They're like, right, we don't even argue because we know that, you know, and I always have this thing. And in fact, my friend Carly Wilford was talking about making a track out of this because I say it all the time. But I always say, and I say it to the staff all the time, it's really simple, guys. Just ask yourself what's best for the business. Not what's best for you. It's what's best for the business, because that is going to give you the answer. So yeah, if you hear a track coming out soon with that,
I'll know where the sample came from.
That was, you know, where the sample came from. We had a really interesting thing with a track recently. I had Carly Wilford, my friend Beck was here, and this artist that we had on site called Rome, and he's like, oh my God, he's so talented, so cool, very quirky. And the four of us went out to Dolt Villa, and we kind of all sort of dressed up, but like in very quirky ways. And everyone kept sort of staring. We went to the restaurant to use the bathroom on the way back, because, you know, going to use the bathroom at Dolt Villa is an absolute nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we came back, and the whole restaurant just went really quiet. And Rome, who's a vocalist, he just looked at us and went, "We turn heads," like this, right? And he said this one line, and the girls were like, "Oh my God, that's great." So we literally came back to the villa, got into the dome, and we made a track called "We Turn Heads." And I will send it to you because you will love it. And
Please
it's just
do.
like, I actually got to, that was probably the only time that I've got to experience the Staar Player experience as an artist. It's the only time that's happened to me. But yeah, I think it's
such a great story.
It's a great story, and I love that everything has a story to it. And I think certainly for me, joining the dots, looking backwards, I look at, if I hadn't have had my daughter, then I wouldn't have had the drive that I had. If I didn't have the drive that I had, I wouldn't have succeeded as well as I did in the industry that I, you know, was attracted to, but probably could have done anything in sales, actually.
Yeah.
But then the fact that I was then able to work, because I wouldn't have been, without the digital stuff, I wouldn't have been able to transition from real estate to music. It's very hard to go from one industry to another at executive level, and that digital thing for me was a real plug. You know, working in prop tech for so many years, because technology is technology, right? It's
I've been thinking about that a lot.
Business.
It's like, and it also, whenever anyone's looking at someone's CV, or they're just like literally looking for buzzwords and keywords. So transitioning is super difficult. And technology is, as you say, one of the ways where it's like, okay, if you get into tech, then there's lots of different tools underneath tech. So it's kind of like a leveling up to go across to then go into a different space.
Absolutely. And it just happened really organically. And ironically, I was the most untechy person ever. To the point, like, I think I remember my daughter setting up my Facebook page for me because she's really techie, and I was like, "Oh, what'd you do with this?" And now, like, I'm literally not quite writing code, but pretty much. It's a belief system as well. I remember someone telling me, he was like, "You're the best salesperson I've ever met, but you're terrible at tech," and so that went in my brain. So I was like, just told myself I was terrible at tech and terrible at tech. And a friend of mine who was the CTO of Love Film, he said to me, "You're not terrible at tech, you're just telling yourself this." And because he was techie, I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And we did some stuff on the computer, and he's like, "Well, there you go." And I was like, "Why am I so scared of this?" And then I just got over it, and then ended up working in it. And again, it's going back to that, you build confidence by doing. And then, you know, and that's the way, you know, because we are what we tell ourselves. And it's really that simple, you know?
I absolutely love, I mean, you said it briefly earlier in terms of how you've been able to achieve stuff, and it's going to be one of those things that really stays with me, but just that fact of believing that you can figure anything out. And I think that's so important when we talk about the challenges that everyone's facing in the industry. If you feel that you can't
it's looking for that, exactly, and it's looking for that evidence, because, and even if that evidence isn't directly correlated to the industry that you're in, or, you know, it's a bit like how we take inspiration from music, from making a house track from rock, for example, or hip hop, whatever. You know, it's looking about, you know, I look at this and go, well, maybe I haven't done this in before here, but I remember when, I remember actually at Tepper, Sarah Beanie's business, is that I had an internal telesales team, which as an estate agent, I'd never had. Obviously, it just doesn't exist. I'm like, and it was an army. And I'm like, how do I figure this out? And then I remembered that when I was like 15, had sold double glazing over the phone and like absolutely smashed it. It was like, nailed it. I was like the top salesperson, like super quick. And I remember thinking, and this was the 90s, completely different. Our leads were a page out the phone book, right, you're ringing Brown today, that's your thing. But I remembered back to it and I was like, I remember what I did then. And then if I do this, and then all of a sudden I'd figured it out and then I was able to replicate it. So but one thing wouldn't have necessarily had anything to do with the other. And I think, like, again, going back to my leadership skills, I feel like the reason I'm a very strong leader, because I consider myself to be a very strong leader, is my ability to be both mum and dad, because I can be empathetic and nurturing and inspiring, but I can also really, wear that kind of, and I'm going back to the kind of patriarchy mum and dad archetypes here, right? Where mum gives you a hug and dad doesn't, which of course is just a patriarchal example. But as I brought my daughter up playing both those roles, I feel like it enabled me to balance the mantle between hard and soft and push and pull and, wearing those two hats at any one time. So, but yeah, if you'd have asked me that probably even a few years ago, I'd have been like, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion. I wouldn't have known that. So that's why I think it's really important for people to understand that it's in them. They wouldn't have the opportunity if it wasn't there. And there is evidence for something they've done in their life to bring them to that, and know that they got this far for a reason. The human experience is not easy. We all have challenges, but our ability to figure it out is always there because we figured it out this far.
We're obviously both women in this not very female heavy industry. How have you found that, and what have been some of the main challenges and ways you've kind of gone about not letting them prevent you from being here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I honestly think it has evolved over the years. And I think, again, working in such a male-dominated environment at such a high level in real estate was obviously a good grounding for that. But when I started DJing, I remember playing back to back with a friend of mine, and we were closing after after the headliners, and they didn't want to let me in the booth because they thought that I was his girlfriend, groupie, and or whatever. And this was obviously going back to like 2012, whatever, when there was hardly any of us actually playing. And then it became a sort of sexualized thing, and I had to deal with the whole, well, she only gets gigs because she's good looking or has got curves or whatever else. To now, then it becoming less about looks, but more about the fact you don't really have talent, or you'd have to dress a certain way to prove you've got talent. And then it's almost like actually being sexualized is a good thing, and the sexier you are, the better it will be for you. And it kind of I've seen it do all these things. And in fact, I did it when I started playing. I went along the whole because I'm very glamorous. I love a bit of glamour, so I went along the glamour route. And then I went, oh, I'm playing techno now, so I must only wear all black and like cloaks and almost like gothic-esque to be taken seriously for the music. And then now I've kind of just gone to whatever, I think again, because I'm now at that point where I'm like, my ability to just be me and turn up as me it's become embodied. But I think if I was to look back or speak to my younger self, or if it was artists that were at the beginning of their journey or facing these challenges, because I certainly think a lot of the female artists that I speak to now that are established are fairly similar to me, where they're just like, we've been doing this for ages, we know we're great, whatever, it's kind of irrelevant to them. But I do think it's still something that women and girls that are starting out in their journey still feel that there's still a little bit of stigma around it. There's still this, and I feel that actually it's irrelevant. It's about just play great music and just be yourself. Authenticity is where it's at, really.
Yeah.
So I think there is still some challenges, but I also think that one thing I know to be true in life and in business is that nobody is competing at the top. Everyone's collaborating. There's no competition at the top. Everyone is collaborating. If you think about girls that empower other girls, if I look at you and go, wow, she's beautiful, your beauty doesn't detract from mine. I'd rather be like, yeah, let's go be beautiful together, or let's go be talented together, or let's go do this together. There's no competition.
What's the line
there.
from the song? Everyone notices us or something. We turn heads.
Yeah, we turn heads, exactly. And it's exactly that. And it's like, and you turn heads for a variety of reasons from the inside out, right? Whatever it is. If you understand that, and you understand that the level you want to be at is collaborative, then that's the angle that I think you should take when you're on your way up. Always try to be collaborating with people. And if people don't want to collaborate with you, go, okay, that's cool. They're just not your people, and they're not part of your story.
Yeah. It's such I was actually just thinking that it's almost like a full circle observation from our conversation. But one of the biggest challenges I found in the earlier stages of building in the music industry and being female was building relationships, because obviously if I was meeting other DJs and trying to build relationships with producers, I felt like I was trying to be ultra professional and almost trying to constantly reiterate that I was there in that conversation for the exact same reason as everyone else, and not because I was interested in dating them. I very specifically was not like, I'm here to talk about music.
Yeah.
And actually what's really nice about what you're building at Staar Player is that kind of environment where everyone knows that everyone is there for the music. That's very clearly.
Absolutely.
So those kind of collaboration spaces where it's super safe, you're super well kind of looked after, and everyone can kind of show up from the same place, regardless of gender, sexuality,
exactly.
is really beautiful, I think. The final thing I wanted to ask you is just if people are listening, because I know you, as you say, you invite and you curate Staar Player so that you can make sure you're getting the right balance and sounds and all that kind of thing. But if people want to engage, what's the best way for them to engage and start following?
Yeah. So we've got a community. We're just about to launch a WhatsApp group. So we're going to start building a community around that as well. We have obviously Instagram DMs. We've got somebody that takes really good care of that. And we've also got, people can apply to come here. Absolutely. It's just that I filter it depending on certain things, just to make sure that people are, the right people in terms of, and make sure that they're going to get what they want out of it as well. So it's not just about being right for us. It's some people want to facilitate things that it's like probably just not, we're just not right for them, and they need to find someone that is,
Yeah.
So it's essentially means that, people can email me at hello@staarplayer.com, and they just would send their bio and Instagram handle or whatever links they have to whatever they have. And generally it's sort of like, hi, I've seen what you're doing, I'd love to join, blah blah blah, and then usually it's obviously dealt with by my colleague, and then she will pass it over to me, and I generally have a conversation with these people and make sure that they're happy and we're happy and so on. So it's essentially means that they are therefore then invited, and that's how we do it. And like I say, we do competitions as well, and all this sort of stuff. But we're building a community here, and I want to be able to get to a point where we can invite as many people that we engage with as possible, and providing it's right for them and it's right for us.
Well, I love what you're building, and I love you, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation. It's so nice.
It's been great to catch up. So when are you next in Ibiza?
I think I might come out for Radio 1 in Ibiza, which is July, I think, end of July, beginning of August.
Yeah, that's July,
And so I think I might come out over then. So I think that's probably the next time. But when I've confirmed, I will send you a message. Are you going to be around all summer?
Yeah, let me know. So we're actually running, so we're here now till June, and then we're back in the villa from end of August to beginning of September. So we're actually out for a couple of months. Okay. We're running sessions, we're doing pop-up studios and sessions on the island, largely because we find that we're not as busy with making music over those 2 months as well, because people are out playing the tracks that they've been making here or over the winter, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we've got another couple of weeks. I guess it's like 2-3 weeks in here. We've got a couple of label camps and stuff coming up, but we are taking bookings from September onwards already. So it's definitely set to be a busy year. But we are running studios, pop-up studios in various different locations. So I will most likely be on the island. Well, I will be on the island definitely for sure in both July and August. So either way, we've got to liaise. But it would be good to really, to get you over to the villa and we'll just have you stay for a couple of days. I'd love for you to experience it and get immersed. So
I'd love to. Maybe in September when it's like back to school kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Would be perfect. Yeah. And, it's like I say, we operate 7 days a week. It's consistent. It's, whatever kind of works for you. And we'll take good care of you. It'd be great to have you here.
That'd be so fun. It's literally like my heaven, just making music. Well, I will let you get back to your day. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been really great. Thank you. And we've trying to do it for a while, so I'm really happy that we made it happen. And shout out to Alex, who introduced us, because he did say to me, like, you know, you girls just have to meet, and he was so right, because we literally hit it off, didn't we, like straight away.
Literally.
He
he's
paired
so
us up
great.
well there. So
he's an excellent like connector. Like, you should meet this person.
He is.
You two would have things to talk about.
Thank you so much again for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care, Lex. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.